There were two brothers, identical twins, the same face, the same DNA, the same childhood. On a winter morning in Finland, one of them climbed onto his bicycle and never came home. A transport truck lost control on an icy intersection. The impact killed him instantly. Police arrived. The road was closed. Witnesses were interviewed. The body was identified. Officers prepared to notify the family. Then, something happened. Exactly 2 hours later, his identical twin brother, who had absolutely no idea his sibling had just died, suddenly decided to go for a bicycle ride. Not tomorrow, not later that week, not when the roads were safer. Now. He left home, pedaled toward the same intersection. A different truck lost control. He died, almost exactly where his brother had. When police responded, some reportedly believed there had been a mistake. Hadn't they already been here? Hadn't they already removed the victim? Only after checking the identities did they realize it wasn't the same man. It was his twin. Coincidence? Maybe. But coincidence has a habit of becoming harder to believe the second time it happens. We tell ourselves, death is random, a mechanical failure, a missed warning, a slippery road, the wrong place at the wrong time. Randomness comforts us because randomness doesn't choose, it doesn't wait, it doesn't care. But what if we've misunderstood it? What if death isn't always the thing that causes the accident? What if it's simply the last piece to fall into place? Think about your own life. Have you ever taken a different road home for no obvious reason? Left the house 5 minutes early, then forgotten why? Ignored a strange feeling or followed one without being able to explain it? Most of us call those moments instinct, impulse, chance, tiny decisions that disappear. Almost the moment they are made, until one of them changes everything. History is filled with moments like that. Not dramatic decisions, not heroic sacrifices, just ordinary people making ordinary choices before walking into extraordinary consequences. Looking back, the pattern almost feels impossible. A delay, a wrong turn, a passing conversation, a coin toss, a sandwich, each one insignificant, until suddenly it isn't. More than 20 years ago, a horror film introduced millions of people to a terrifying idea. Not that death hunts us, but that it plans, patiently, methodically, waiting for us to unknowingly complete the trap ourselves. The films called it Final Destination. Most people saw it as fiction, but the question behind it didn't begin in Hollywood. It began in history. Because scattered across different countries, different decades, and completely unrelated lives are cases that ask the same unsettling question. Not, how did they die? But, why did everything happen exactly that way? Tonight, we'll open 4 case files. Individually, none of them prove anything. Together, they ask a question I still can't answer. Let's begin with a man, a tree, and a bullet that waited 20 years. If the twins were simply an extraordinary coincidence, perhaps this can be explained too. The year was 1883. A man named Henry Ziegland ended a relationship. His former girlfriend struggled to cope with the heartbreak. Eventually, she took her own life. Her brother wanted someone to blame. In his mind, that someone was Henry. He tracked him down, walked onto his property, raised a revolver, and fired. The bullet struck Henry in the face. Believing he had taken his revenge, the brother turned the gun on himself and pulled the trigger. 2 shots, 2 men. No one was supposed to survive. But Henry didn't die. The bullet had only grazed his cheek. Instead of entering his skull, It buried itself deep inside the trunk of a large tree, standing just behind him. Henry survived. His attacker didn't. The nightmare seemed over. 20 years passed. The scar faded. Life moved on. The tree remained, quietly standing, exactly where it always had, the bullet still inside. Then, one ordinary afternoon, Henry decided to clear his land. Why then? Why not 5 years earlier? Why not 10 years later? History never tells us. It simply records that after 20 years, Henry looked at the tree and decided it was finally time. The trunk was too large for an axe, so he chose something faster: dynamite. He drilled the holes, packed the explosives, lit the fuse, and stepped back. Then, the explosion. The tree exploded into splinters, wood, dust, smoke, and something else. The bullet, the same bullet that had failed to kill Henry 20 years earlier. The blast hurled it from the trunk like a piece of shrapnel, across the yard, straight toward the man who had unknowingly set it free. This time, it didn't miss. Henry Ziegland died, almost instantly. Read that story once and it sounds impossible. Read it again, and a different question appears. Not, could the explosion launch the bullet? Of course it could. Not, could the bullet survive? It clearly did. The unsettling question is this: why, after 20 years, did Henry suddenly decide to cut down that tree? The bullet never moved. The tree never moved. Only Henry did. One ordinary decision, one quiet afternoon, one practical choice. And a bullet that had been waiting since 1883 struck the same target it failed to 20 years earlier. Coincidence? Perhaps. But if coincidence can wait 20 years, what else might it be willing to wait for? Our next case doesn't wait decades. It happens in a single moment. A freezing night, a broken tour bus, and a coin spinning through the air. If Henry's story suggests that death can wait, this one asks, can it change your mind? It was 1959. Buddy Holly, Ritchie Valens, the Big Bopper. 3 musicians crossing a frozen American Midwest. The tour bus was falling apart. The heater barely worked. Some musicians were beginning to suffer frostbite. Everyone was exhausted. Buddy Holly had had enough. He chartered a small airplane to the next stop. There were only 3 seats. One belonged to Buddy, another to guitarist Tommy Allsup. Ritchie Valens was supposed to stay behind, which made perfect sense. Ritchie hated flying. Friends knew it. Bandmates knew it. He avoided small airplanes whenever he could. If anyone was likely to stay on the bus, it was him. But freezing nights change people. Standing beside that broken bus, shivering in the dark, Ritchie suddenly asked Tommy for his seat. Neither man argued. Tommy reached into his pocket, pulled out a $50 coin. "I'll flip you for it." Funny. How much weight can rest on something so small? Ritchie called heads. The coin landed. Heads. He smiled. According to those who were there, he laughed. "That's the first time I've ever won anything in my life." It was also the last. Minutes after takeoff, the plane disappeared into the night. It crashed into a frozen Iowa cornfield. There were no survivors. The world would later remember it as the day the music died. History remembers the crash. I keep thinking about the coin. What changed? Not the weather, not the plane, not Ritchie's lifelong fear. Only one decision, one impulse, one flip. Henry looked at a tree and decided, today. Ritchie looked at a freezing bus and decided, Not tonight. Perhaps that's all coincidence is. Ordinary decisions viewed backwards. Or perhaps the trap is never visible until it closes. Our next case didn't change one life. It changed the 20th century. And it began with a man who simply stopped for lunch. If the first two cases changed individual lives, this one changed the world. The year was 1914. Europe was already unstable. Empires competed, alliances were fragile. The continent was waiting for something to tip it over the edge. That something was supposed to happen. On a street in Sarajevo, Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian Empire, was traveling through the city. Waiting for him were several young assassins, each carrying the same mission: kill the Archduke. As the motorcade approached, one of them threw a bomb. He missed. The bomb bounced off the Archduke's car and exploded beneath the vehicle behind it. Several people were injured. The Archduke escaped. The motorcade sped away. The assassination had failed. If history had ended there, World War I may have looked very different. The assassins scattered. Some disappeared into the crowds. Others abandoned the mission entirely. One of them, Gavrilo Princip, simply walked away. The opportunity was gone. And then, something completely ordinary happened. He became hungry. Out of every cafe, every bakery, every restaurant in Sarajevo, he chose a small delicatessen, Schiller's. He ordered a sandwich and waited. Meanwhile, the Archduke made a decision of his own. He wanted to visit those injured in the bombing. A new route was chosen, but no one informed the driver. The motorcade turned onto the wrong street. Someone shouted. The driver stopped, tried to reverse. The engine stalled. Now pause, because this is the moment. Everything changes. One assassin misses. One Archduke changes his plans. One driver takes the wrong road. One engine fails. One hungry man walks outside. At that exact moment, Gavrilo Princip stepped out of Schiller's. He looked up. Less than 2 meters away sat the man he believed he would never see again. There was no chase, no dramatic pursuit, no second conspiracy. History simply stopped in front of him. He dropped the sandwich, drew his pistol, fired. Those shots killed the Archduke. But they also ignited a chain of alliances that drew much of the world into war. More than 20 million people would eventually die. Empires collapsed, borders vanished. History changed direction. Most people remember the assassination. I remember everything that almost prevented it. The missed bomb, the wrong turn, the stalled engine, the sandwich. Remove any one of them, and perhaps history unfolds differently. Coincidence? Maybe. But by now, a different question begins to emerge. Not, how unlikely was this? But, how many unlikely things happened together? Because our final case doesn't involve assassins, or bullets, or world leaders. Only 2 brothers, one snowy road, and a coincidence so extraordinary. Even the responding officers struggled to believe it. We've seen a bullet. Wait. A coin. Decide. A wrong turn. Change history. Our final case returns us to where we began. Finland. Winter. A 70-year-old man was cycling through the town of Rahe. The roads were covered in snow. An approaching truck lost control on the ice. The collision killed him instantly. Police arrived. The road was closed. The victim was identified. Officers prepared to notify his family. A tragic accident. Nothing unusual. Until 2 hours later. The man's identical twin brother, still unaware that his brother had died, suddenly decided to go for a bicycle ride. Not the next day, not after the roads were cleared, that afternoon. He left home, followed almost the same route, approached almost the same intersection. Then, another truck lost control. He died, just like his brother. The responding officers reportedly believed there had been some mistake. Hadn't they already attended this accident? Hadn't they already removed the victim? Only after checking the identities did they realize it wasn't the same man. It was his twin. And that brings us back to the beginning. Henry Ziegland looked at a tree. Richie Valens called heads. Gavrilo Princip stopped for lunch. One twin went for a bike ride. 4 ordinary decisions, 4 extraordinary endings. So, what do we do with that? Dismiss them? Call them coincidence? Perhaps we should. Each story, on its own, can be explained. But stories rarely disturb us on their own. Patterns do. Maybe that's all this is. Our minds searching for order in a universe that has none. Or perhaps history occasionally leaves behind a trail of events that refuse to fit comfortably inside the word coincidence. I don't know, and I don't think anyone else does either. But I do know this: the next time you change your route home for no particular reason, or decide at the last second not to get on a train, or leave 5 minutes earlier than usual, you'll probably forget about it within the hour. Because most decisions disappear almost the moment they're made, until one of them doesn't. So what do you think? Is death a brutal hunter or a strategic architect? Share your verdicts in the comments. Until the next case file, stay safe.